So grateful you're here. If you're joining us for the first time, let me extend a welcome to you as well. I am so thankful that you chose to be with us today. You caught us on a good day, also a sad day. Sad because, friends, I don't know how to tell you this, but after 20 weeks, this is my final teaching through what scholarship has argued the most dangerous, controversial book in the Bible, Revelation. And if you are human and you are alive and you live in America, you have probably heard within the last 4 weeks people talk about the end of time, the apocalypse, Donald Trump being the Antichrist. All right. You've probably heard these ideas floating around. And so, what we have done is over the last 20 Sundays, and I ain't gonna lie, I'm a little tired. All right. Like, that's a lot of studying, but the last 20 Sundays, we have attempted to unpack what this controversial book is all about. And two basic premises that I want you to leave with, and then we'll get into today's text. But I want you to remember two things. One, we don't read the Bible at Vinings Lake literally, okay? That's really important. We read the Bible literally or literarily. What I mean is all writings in the Bible are genres. And what Revelation is apocalyptic literature. And when you hear that word apocalypse moving forward, I hope you understand that it is not the way in which most people use it today. In its Greek context, when this writer, who we assume is John, says it's John, probably a school that's writing in the name of John, when he uses the word apocalypse, it literally means an unveiling. That's why it's called revelation, right? Not revelations, plural, revelation, singular, but it's a revelation. What is a revelation? It's an unveiling. All this writer is doing is pulling back the curtain on the late first century Roman Empire. And this is why we spent some time in this book, because there just feels like there's a lot of relevance for us. John is writing to a group of people that has been governed by a series of emperors. These emperors from Nero all the way to the time of this writing, which is Domitian. And all of these emperors have been authoritarian, dictating leaders. And they've got the boot of the empire on the neck of a small group of people that are pushed to the edges that are following a rabbi named Jesus. And so when John writes all of this, all he's doing is he's pulling back the curtain, and he's just trying to show this first century audience the empire is not as it appears to be. It's not going to give you everything it promises. And I need you to see that it presents itself as like the golden age or peace to the world. It presents itself even as Christian per se, all right, our world. It presents itself as good. It presents itself as doing noble, necessary things. And John just says, I want you to see past all of the facade, and I want you to see the empire for what it actually is. And so as we move from here, I want to say to all of you that have been a part of this series, first of all, thank you. A couple questions. One, and I don't know if you can answer this, but maybe you can. Is there anyone in this room who has been here every Sunday for the last 20 teachings? I'm just curious. Okay, no one passes. All right. Is there anyone who's been in here that hasn't been in here but has listened to every single teaching of this particular? Two of you, three of you. Perfect. All right. Okay, several of you. All right. For all of you that just raised your hand, I'll give you a gift certificate. That you are now a certified apocalyptic expert. All right. So thank you. For those that haven't, I get it. There's people that watch us online, follow us online, and they're like, God, it's all so much. And I understand. And all said and done, it's probably somewhere around 21 hours of teaching, almost chapter by chapter through this controversial book. Now, that said, I thought, well, we're going to end it today because there's so much to talk about today. So much happened this week. You know what I'm talking about? So I'm going to hold this week's news, and I'm going to go back to this ancient text, and I want us to remember The book of Revelation is not just apocalyptic literature, but always remember this. Always remember this. Revelation is not a future prediction about the end of the world. It's not. And I know we were all handed that, and we were all taught that, but we were all taught that by a left-behind theology or a dispensational theology. And it just isn't true. John, whoever's writing this, is not writing about 2025 in America. He's just not. He wasn't sitting on an island going, God, they're going to love this in Mableton. He didn't have Trump in mind. He didn't know who Elon was. He wasn't writing any of that for us. He was writing to a specific group of people in the late first century oppressed by Domitian and the Roman Empire. Now, all that says, that does not mean that the book isn't relevant for us. To the contrary, as you've seen, this book has so much relevance for anyone who's claiming to be a follower of Jesus that lives inside of an empire. And it turns out that in 2025 in Mableton, we all live inside of one of the greatest empire the world has ever seen. And so there's a lot of relevance for us as we've been in this book. Now, that said, let's end today. I want to read the very last section. So if you have scriptures and you've read it before, you get to the book of Revelation chapter 22, and right at the very end, John kind of ends his letter. And remember, God, there's been so much, but he is giving us a vision of a new city, a new Jerusalem. So the Roman Empire has come to an end. It has crashed. It's been exposed. It imploded from the inside out. And John says, with every ending, there is a beginning. So for something new to be birthed, something has to die. So the old dies, the Roman Empire, that particular arrangement of the world dies. And then something new begins to emerge. And this is what John is doing. It's no different than when Martin Luther King Jr. stood up and said, I have a dream. What John is doing is he's saying, I have a dream. And here's what I dream. I dream that this city, Jerusalem, that has been demolished by the Roman Empire in all of its greed and all of its corruption and all of its authoritarianism and all of its bigotry. I have a dream that this city that has been demolished by the Roman Empire, I have a dream that it actually is going to be restored. And that actually there's going to be renewal and redemption. And a new Jerusalem is on its way. This wasn't an otherworldly vision, an ethereal picture of heaven one day when you die as futurists see it when they read it. No. John is talking about this world, here and now. And he makes one of the greatest statements that could ever be made in the history of the Bible, and it's this. He says, God is making all things new. So know this, the book of Revelation, the end of this particular world in which John is living, doesn't end in destruction or nihilism. It doesn't end in some sense of despair and hopelessness. It ends not in destruction, but in restoration, in renewal, in redemption of, and here's the word, all things. That's the largest, most inclusive term you could ever use. That restoration is where this story is heading. So he's been talking about this new city, describing it, and oh my God, it has political edges of the Roman Empire. He talks about this new city. There's pearly gates, and when you hear that, I know most of us have been raised evangelical. We're like, yep, that's heaven, right? Streets of gold, whoa, that's heaven. You know, we hear it. And I want to pause here and say that is a reading of this text. And that's okay. If you're here and you read that and that brings you some sense of hope, I can't stress this enough, then hold on to that. I'm not here to deconstruct all the hope you have, all right? Just a little bit of it, all right? So just hold on, all right? But in its context, remember, we're trying to read this in a historical and literary way, all right? The futurist way, the left behind way, is a brand new kind of way of reading things, and it has so much toxicity to it that it would do us well to unlearn and deconstruct some of that. But when John says they're streets of gold, you understand that's a cut, that's a subversive image. He's cutting the Roman Empire's legs off. He's saying all these things that you've worked for, trying to create gold streets and toilets and all that. Just like John just says, no, no, no. Like, like in the New Jerusalem, those things that you value, like gold, oh my God, those are things we just walk on in the new city. Like it's our asphalt, right? So remember, it's a flip. John is writing a very subversive, like political writing here. Now, all that said, he's been writing about the details of it. What I want to do today is I want to get to the kind of final part here. He starts to talk about who's in this city that he's describing. And I want to get into that because the fundamental question is who gets to come to the New Jerusalem, right? As John sees the city, real world, it being restored, who's allowed in? And that's where I want to go today. But let me read this to you. This is Revelation 22, verse 8. I, John, am the one who heard and saw these things. 21 chapters of it. And when I heard and saw them, I fell down to worship at the feet of the angel who showed them to me. But he said, you must not do that. All right, now pause here. When I saw that you must not do that, I don't know why, but my immediately thought went to It's a Wonderful Life, Clarence. Do you know what I'm talking about? You mustn't do that. Oh, no. All right. You must not do that. I am a fellow servant with you and your brothers and sisters, the prophets, and with those who keep the words of this book. Worship God. Now, just a little parenthetical note here. He's reinforcing the central message of his entire book. What he's saying is that imperial cult where people bow down and bent the knee to the emperor, he again is repeating the central message of his book. That is idolatry. Do not bend the knee to the emperor. All right? Verse 10. And he said to me, do not seal up the words of the prophecy of this book, for the time is near. Let the evildoer still do evil. Let the filthy still be filthy, and the righteous still do right, and the holy still be holy. See, I am coming soon. My reward is with me to repay according to everyone's works. I am the Alpha and Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Blessed are those who wash their robes, so that they will have the right to the tree of life and may enter the city by the gates. Now here's where it gets interesting. Outside are the dogs, the sorcerers, and sexually immoral, and murderers, and idolaters, and everyone who loves and practices falsehood. It is I, Jesus, who sent my angel to you with this testimony for the churches. I am the root and the descendant of David, the bright morning star. The Spirit and the bride say, come. Let everyone who hears say, come, and let everyone who is thirsty come. Let anyone who wishes to take the water of life as a gift. I warn everyone who hears the words of the prophecy of this book, if anyone adds to them, God will add to that person the plagues described in this book. If anyone takes away from the words of the book of this prophecy, God will take away that person's share in the tree of life and in the holy city which are described in this book. Now, I want to pause here for a second, because the first time I read that, I'd not heard that line since my evangelical days. And I'm not going to lie, it triggered some stuff in me, because I used to hear the evangelical preachers all the time be like, don't add or take away from the book. You know what I'm talking about? Which was like, okay, that's pretty much means the people who wrote Left Behind are going to be in a lot of trouble because they added to the book. All right. Let me say one thing about this. Don't read into that statement. Scholarship says this. That statement, do not add or take away, was a very common statement in ancient documents, and all it is a copyright law. Do you understand that? They didn't have copyright laws in the first century, so you can read outside sources out of the Bible, and many of them say that same thing. Don't add to or take away. Basically, they're saying don't plagiarize it, all right? It's a copyright stamp, all right? Verse 20, then one who testifies to these things says, surely I am coming soon. Amen. Come, Lord Jesus. The grace of the Lord Jesus be with all. Yeah. Yeah, some manuscripts added, be with all the saints. But scholarship says it was never in the early manuscripts of the Greek, the saints. They just couldn't handle how universal John's idea was. That he says, may the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ be with all. All. Now, I want to get in this for a minute, and then just like one or two political statements, then we're out of here. All right? And here's the thing. We're off next week. We're not going to be here next week. So I want to give 2 for the price of 1 today. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's what we're going to do. All right. First, let's talk about who gets in this city. I want to start from like just a very cursory reading of this. It is interesting to me, and I think it's important to remember that as John is writing this on the Isle of Patmos, or wherever is writing this, to remember the image that he decides to go with is of a new Jerusalem. Specifically, he decides to end his writing, his apocalyptic literature, with an image of a city. Now that's telling in itself, okay? That John decides to use an image of a city and not an image of a village. You know what I'm saying? Now, when he uses the image of a city, it's important that you know this is not about buildings, traffic, 285, 75, 85, downtown Atlanta, all the tall buildings. Yeah, right? Some people love city life. I'm not a fan of it. I'm just going to be honest with you. Katie, my wife, loves it. She loves it. If she could be in the heart of New York City, that's exactly where she'd be, all right? She loves the people. She doesn't want to see the sky. She wants to see tall buildings. She loves just people everywhere. And I, on the other hand, am the complete antithesis. I spend most of my days in my office with the door shut. It's just me, a cup of water, some peanuts, and the Lord. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm just assuming he's there, all right? Or maybe she's not. I don't know. All right. That said, it's just peaceful. It's quiet. Everyone knows this who's in my inner circle. Everyone knows this. I don't answer my phone. I'm not even sure I have one. I won't answer it. I don't. And then when I go out into the real world, have you recently heard a cell phone ring? I'm like, what is that? What are we doing? There's a thing called put it on vibrate. You know what I'm talking about? Like, why are we ringing? And then it goes way back because I start having flashbacks. There was a time when cell phones came out where we used to buy ringtones. We would pay money to hear a particular ring. Now I'm like, I don't want to hear any ringtones. I don't want to hear any noise. Like I get up there and I just do my thing. Katie's the opposite. She loves it. She loves the movement, the motion, the noise, everything. Just yesterday we got in the car, Saturday. I was like, what are we doing on Saturday? Katie's like, our niece has a gymnastics thing. I'm like, all right, this would be fun. Let's do it. So we get in the car and then as Katie, in good Katie fashion, she's like, hey, we're going to need a little early because I got 5 stops to make. I'm like, okay, all right. And so I get in and you all probably do the same thing I do. You have to make decisions immediately in Atlanta. And I don't care what time of day it is, what day it is, doesn't matter. When you get in your car, the very first thing I do is I have to start making decisions as a driver going, which direction am I going to go? Because if I go here, we could hit traffic. If I go here, we could hit traffic. And if I go here, we could hit traffic. So you punch in Waze, and you're hopeful that Waze isn't tripping out, and it actually picks up the traffic signals. And oftentimes, it's a misfire, right? I mean, shout out to Waze. Get your stuff together, all right? And then I have it on my car where you punch it in, and it's supposed to do it too, but turns out my car doesn't factor in like the Peach Pass roads, so it tries to put me on that, which 2 weeks ago I drove on like 10 miles without even being there, and then I saw the sign that says $150 fine for riding, and I'm like, God, Atlanta, all right? So check this out. Katie gets in the car, and she's like, well, let's just take 285, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then I was like, well, I just don't feel right about it, so I cut around and I was like, oh, we'll get on after where the Brave Stadium is, like Truist, because that whole part, I mean, does it not, it just clogs, right? So I'm like, we'll go around it because we got to go 75 north. So I went around it, and you ever just felt good? Like, look at me navigating. I went around what Waze said, didn't listen to it. Went around what Elon said in my system, didn't do it. I went around everybody. Even Katie was like, no, I'm leading today. I got it. He was mansplaining at its finest. I'm like, I got it. We're good. I got it. And And I decided to go around, and then I took off on 41, and I was like, I'm going to cut in. So I cut in, then jump back on 75. And guys, I hit it perfect timing. Dude, cars were flowing, and I was just literally just looking over at Katie, just grinning like, check that out. And it went really well for about one exit. You know what I'm talking about? And then you're like, we're cooking, baby. And Katie's like, there's brake lights. And then you just sit there. And you know how it is. You're between all these tractor trailers. And I had a moment yesterday. I just looked at Katie. I was like, why do we live here? I don't get it. This is not healthy for the psyche of America. You understand, where we live isn't the healthiest thing for any of us. We're all in this rat race. Doesn't it feel like that? And everybody's like, we've got to move out of the way. And I'm just like, what? Are we all in a hurry to die? Like, where are we going? Where are we all going? And then it occurs to me, Katie's like, it's a good question. Where are you going? John says, if I'm going to give like an image of the New Jerusalem, it's not a countryside. It's a city. And I got to be honest, I don't know that I like that. I kind of wish John had ended it going, I want to talk to you about a new city. So, yeah, the Roman Empire, out with that corruption. But something new is descending. Heaven and earth are coming together. And it's going to look like just a field with flowers, no buildings. And check this out. No, here's what I love what John has said. I wish John had said, and you're going to be the only one there. No other people. And here's what I love what John said. Whatever you want there will be there. And whatever you don't want there won't be there. It sounds amazing. That's not what he does. He gives the image of a city. And I think it's telling, because perhaps what John is saying is, as I see the restoration of this world in which we live, I want to remind you, this New Jerusalem is a big, vast, expansive, and fully inclusive city that extends beyond our ethnocentric boundaries. And it extends beyond our nationalistic borders. We are told that all the nations, according to John, will come to this city. Revelation 21:26. When he uses that word nation, it's important to realize the concept as we understand nations is not how they understood nations in the late first century. This is a Greek word, ethne, which is plural of the singular word ethnos, which is where we get ethnic groups. This is not about contemporary concepts of a nation. What John is saying is, in the New Jerusalem, there are no ethnocentric boundaries. There are no nationalistic borders. There are no walls to keep immigrants out. What John is saying is actually, there are walls, but I want to be clear. The gates to this new city never shut. They're always open. And it's almost like he is just, in some ways, disrupting all of our notions and ideas of only wanting to be around people who look like us, talk like us, act like us, think like us, dress like us. It's like he's blowing up our borders. He's putting a dagger in the heart of any ethnocentric boundaries that we have created. The New Jerusalem, to be clear, the New Jerusalem is filled with three words that are going to be problematic for lots of people. John makes it clear. The New Jerusalem is filled with diversity. The New Jerusalem is filled with equity. And the New Jerusalem is filled with inclusion. So what I want to say to futurists who read this as an image of heaven, great. Keep your futuristic reading. But if you're going to read it in a futuristic way, I want to help you with your theology for just a second. Because if you don't like DEI here in America, you're not going to want to go to the New Jerusalem. Because it's filled with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that might be problematic for some people. And so I think the invitation is extended to MAGA. And I think that invitation is, hey, before you sign up to the Jesus movement or the Jesus movement that you claim is the Jesus movement, to be clear, here's where the thing is headed in a futuristic reading. So you may not want to be a part of that. Because I keep hearing people have a lot of problems with DEI, but they're always like, but I'm a Christian and I can't wait to go to heaven. And I'm like, brother, hear me out. You're going to hate heaven. All right? First of all, when you arrive and you see that Jesus is brown, that's going to be utterly shocking to you. And then when you get there and realize some of these people who wrote the Bible are gay, that's really going to do a number on you. It's going to be real problematic when you find out King David might have been a homosexual. And if that shocks some of you, there are good scholarship that actually is like into that writing between he and Jonathan in the scriptures, right? Yeah. That may be surprising for some of us. I know. The New Jerusalem, it's filled with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I also want to say this, and this is my last Sunday on the Revelation, so when I tell you I'm going for it today, just strap on the seatbelt for a minute. And honestly, we've kind of said all we wanted to say around here, and we're still here, so I don't know that it can get much worse, but we'll try to get to the line of it. Here we go, all right? There is no, and this is, I just hold on to this because when I first read this, I thought, God, isn't that interesting? No ethnocentric boundaries or no nationalistic borders. So the New Jerusalem is filled with diversity, equity, and inclusion. But also, this is, how liberating is this for so many people? And here it is. And even for me, as a man whose social intersection is white and straight, check this out. There is no white supremacy in the New Jerusalem. I mean, can you pause and breathe that in? I mean, I long for that. Just pause and breathe that in because we all know this, right? We know. I'm a 43-year-old man who was raised in a great home. And I want to be very clear about something. White supremacy, I had to work through in therapy myself. Yeah. And I want to be clear. People that act like, oh, there's no white supremacy. If it's in me, it's in you. And it was baked and conditioned into me as I grew up. No, they didn't come out right and say it because we live in that time where everything is ambiguous. So they didn't come out and be like, hey, just want to let you know, Cody, as you arrive here on earth, you're better than everyone. No, it just a slow conditioning. It would be driving through the black part of town going, be careful when you're down there. Why have you never said be careful driving through the mountains of East Tennessee with MAGA crowd? I'm just curious because no one's like, be careful. Have you ever seen that crowd? I grew up there in East Tennessee, in the Smoky Mountains of East Tennessee. They have shotguns and stuff. Like, yeah. But no one's ever, be careful around them. No, it's like, they're good. Well, why? What about these? That, be careful. Right? Yes. And then they never said it was just a slow conditioning. And then you look around and you're like, oh, that's how it actually works. And then you start reading history going, oh, there's a thing called white flight. There's a whole history in Atlanta, a whole bunch of white people that pulled out to the suburbs. Why? Because they wanted to get away, because it was dangerous. Because God forbid we have a relationship with people who have different tones, colors of skin. You know, that's terrifying, right? Yes. And it's innate within, it's been, this thing has been passed down, and you can trace it. Just keep looking at your history, trace it all the way back. All the way back. And this is why a group of white men decided to land on this place we call the United States of America and own Native Americans. Because they intuitively, like actually inside of them, they believed they were better. And this is why they would use racial slurs to these Native Americans. This is how they saw them. And I love John is just saying, imagine a city where that doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, that's equality. And as great as the American idea is, and though we have made some progress, it is still in the DNA of our country. Because we might have said all men are created equal, but I don't know that we really fully understand or even mean what those words say. Yeah. And so what I would like to say, we'll get into the invitation part of this, but this is problematic for a lot of people. Even in our country, you still see it today. Just this week, I read an article about our current immigration crisis. And I watched a video of Donald Trump in, I believe, Texas. And he said, immigration is, quote, a very sad thing for our country and is poisoning the blood of our country, unquote. He went on to call them illegal alien animals. And he said in his speech, the Democrats say, please stop calling them animals. They're humans. And he said, quote, I will not stop calling them animals because they are not humans. They are animals, unquote. That is the president of the United States of America. And I want to tell you, as John unveils things, I've said it before, but I'm going to tell you what we're going to keep doing here. We're about to finish the book of Revelation, and some of you have been asking, are you still going to be political? I don't know how to not be political. I want to say that. And that's why I understand Vinings Lake's not for everybody. I get it. Some people want to go to a space, and this isn't judgment. Some people want to go to a space on Sunday morning where it's like watching a sports game. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to talk about politics. I just talk to me about heaven and loving my neighbor. Here's the problem. I cannot talk to you about heaven and loving your neighbor without talking to you about politics. Because everything is political. Do you understand that? There is no such thing as not being political. And the very person who says, I'm just not a political person, that is a political statement. What you're saying in that statement is, I choose, because I have privilege, to not participate. I just want you to know, some people don't have the option to not participate. Some people don't. And so, as a leader of a spiritual collective, you better believe I will keep the foot on the gas. And you better believe, rest assured, I will keep the flame of hell, fire, on the feet of this president and this administration for the next 4 years. Now, you say, why? That isn't let's just all get a common enemy so we can build something. God knows we're not trying to build anything around here. In fact, when I come into Vinings Lake, our team gets mad at me because I'm like, the less crowd, the better. Because the more people, the more problems. And the more people you have come in, then you have to start talking about, we're going to go to 2 services. Blah, God, get out of here with that. I don't want any of that. Mega churches nauseate me. And I don't mean that. Mega churches are great for people who love mega churches. I've just been in the church world too long, and I'm like, I just, no, thank you. All I've ever wanted was like maybe 20 or 30 people to just hang out with on Sundays. And that's it. And when COVID happened, we literally got down to 20. I was like, finally, we're doing something around here. And then all of a sudden, this administration comes in, and all you new people are coming in, and we're happy you're here, but I'm also like, it's getting a little too large for my taste. Yeah. But I say it to say we're not like, I know, I hold it all. I'm doing my own shadow work. I understand the contradictions from progressives. Yes, I ran from the far right all the way to the far left, hit a wall that looked just like the far right. I know what swapping fundamentalisms are. I know all of that. So when I make these statements, I am aware of all of that, and I'm attempting to integrate all of that. But I also want you to know I cannot in good conscience be where I am and just give you talks and not talk about how the marginalized, the outcast, and the alone are being stepped on with this administration. And I also can't talk to you about not being some prophetic voice in the midst of this culture that stands up and says, no, You cannot hijack Christianity, and you cannot continue to use Christianity to further your imperialistic agenda. And if you're going to continue to do that as an administration, we're going to continue to gather and pull the curtain back and show the world exactly what it is. Why? Because that's how we heal. We have to pull everything that sits in the shadows of our American empire up to the surface and say, what if we could acknowledge this and then begin to heal this? Yeah, that's what we're going to do. I'm not here to be a flagman for the Democratic Party. No, they got problems. Lots of them. I'm not here to be a flag. I'm doing and I'm not here to be a centrist either, okay? Like, oh, he's just trying to find himself in the middle. I am doing my best to embrace the Sermon on the Mount, the teachings of Jesus, and the political edges that come with that. Wherever they land, let them land. I am employed by the Almighty. When you give an account to your boss, so do I. I go home, I have two bosses. One's named God, the other's named Katie, okay? And when I get in the car, I say, how was it today? Her opinion matters. Second, I get alone this week, and I'm like, all right, God, how we doing? How we doing? Yeah, that's it. So what I want to say is, when I hear these words, calling illegal, what he says, illegal alien animals, I just want you to know that's going to be problematic. The New Jerusalem is for futurists who read it this way. And of course, we know this. This is why there was ever a Adolf Hitler. What is that? Ethnic cleansing. It's people that saw themselves as better than Jews. It's not much difference than white American and Native Americans. And here we are again with undocumented immigrants. It's like the same story. We're just repeating all these patterns. But I want you to see it for what it is. Anytime someone dehumanizes someone else, you better believe there's an agenda behind it. And so let's just keep our eyes open. Let's keep our ears open. Listen for the language of dehumanization. I just ask you to do that. As you're watching the news, listen for the language of dehumanization. Listen to the way this man dehumanizes people who disagrees with him. One thing I can say to you, I've never dehumanized the man. I actually think the man is made in the image of God. I just think he's unaware that he's made in the image of God. I think Donald Trump is unconscious. He's lost his connection to his soul. And I also think he just needs to grow up. I think he needs emotional maturity, and I think he needs someone to teach him how to become a human being. And this is my hope, and that's my prayer. You're like, you pray for the president? I actually do. Yep. And I'm not even a big praying person. I deconstructed that, and I was like, I'm kind of good with prayer. It's not that I don't. Someone go, oh, God, we got to pray, all right? Hear me out. I pray in different ways. I'm like my niece. My niece recently, I cannot stop laughing about this. My niece, my brother's oldest daughter, they called one day. We were on the way up to Tennessee, and they called one day, and they were like, oh, my God, we're going to have to cancel dinner or whatever. We're not going to be at dinner because my niece Bella is in the hospital. Her sugar spiked up to like 1,900. Yeah, something like that. And I was like, oh, my gosh, that's crazy. And literally, as I was there, we walked into the hospital and come to find out, yes, she's got like diabetes. And so they're, starting to, I mean, this is a life change, right? I don't know how old she is, but this is a big change for her. And my mom and dad were in there, and my mom said, I had to tell you something hilarious. I'm like, what? She said, when Bella texts me, oh my God, I'm going to the hospital. I'm scared. She said, I'm praying for you. And then when mom finally got to the hospital, she said she reached out to touch Bella, and she's like, hey, I told you I was praying for you. I'm praying for you. And my niece, in all of her innocence, looked up and she said, well, it's not working. And I have never felt more pride in someone being a true family member. Yeah, it's not working. So when I talk about prayer, the reason I say that is because I don't know. I mean, it's fine, meditation, all that's great. I work on that too. I've got anxiety, all that stuff too. But also, the reason I don't do it a lot is because I just think sometimes we use prayer as an excuse to not do stuff. Like, if you really want to pray, put some legs to it. You can pray about God help the poor. Well, why don't you just go feed the poor? God help America. Well, why don't you go help America? I think the more we bring things to God, God's like, I'm pushing it back to you. I created you. You are the answer to the prayer. You're begging me for things and you are the answer. Go do something about it. Yeah. So that's my theology on prayer. All right, proceed. Now, let me just say this and we'll wind it up, finish it up. Here we go. Let's take like MAGA for an example. They that particular group of people, they have a problem with diversity, equity, inclusion, and you might say, yeah, they're gonna have a real hard time. Well, here's what I think John is gonna. I'm holding two worlds here. John actually says, but it may not be anything they need to worry about, because if futurists, as they read this as like a picture of heaven, if you're a futurist, and I would imagine predominantly a good portion of the MAGA crowd is, I would just say this: you're not going to have to worry about it because you're not going to be there. You're not going to be there. And now when you say that, you're like, whoa, that's a little. You're saying they're not going to be in heaven. This is what John is saying. John is saying, check this out. The people who don't like diversity, equity, inclusion. This is John. They're outside the city. I mean, you can just read it. It's Revelation 22. Now, he words it like this, because, again, he's not in 2025, but he words it like this. Outside are the dogs, the sorcerers, the sexually immoral, the murderers, the idolaters, and everyone who loves and practices falsehood. Now, you read that and you're like, wait a minute, why is he talking about being sexually immoral? You remember, pause. We've already talked about this. Every time John uses this idea of sexual immorality, what is he talking about? He's talking about how people in the Jesus movement and Judaism got in bed with the empire. So he's talking about modern translation here, all right? Hang with me. This is a very dangerous game, but it's okay to make some correlations. Imagine a world like America where you had evangelicals get in bed with the empire. And John is saying those people, they're outside the new city. Yep. Those who have bowed down to the emperor that he calls idolatry, he says it right there, and idolaters. They're outside the emperor, outside of the city. Murderers, outside the city. I think about this moment right now. I think about this week. Ben from Ben and Jerry's Ice Cream got arrested. You know America's off the rails when they arrest Ben from Ben and Jerry's Ice Cream. The most harmless man who's ever walked the face of the planet, they're like, arrest that guy. And Ben of Ben and Jerry's Ice Cream just walked in and decided to protest, and here's why. Because he says we have to stop killing Gaza kids. I don't know. I just feel like there'd be a lot of people who are like, yeah, I could get on board with that. We probably shouldn't kill kids. Right on. No, not in America. They're like, arrest that guy, get him out of here. You can't say that. And this is the danger of us losing our democracy. When you start arresting people like Ben from Ben and Jerry's, I'm going to be clear about something. I'm not trying to hype up anxiety. It might not be long before you have to find another guest speaker. It's like, where'd Coco go? He's hanging out with Ben. You hear what I'm saying? And that's murderers. I want to be very clear. If we keep funding the war of Israel attacking Gaza, that is murder. That's blood on our hands. Yes, he's just saying those people that do that, outside the city. Yeah. This is the idea. So what is he getting at here? Idolatry, falsehood, sexual immorality are all references to the imperial cult. John is specifically addressing emperor worship in the merging of empire and religion. And what he says is, in the new city, apparently, there are those outside the city gates and those still coming in to the city gates. He's saying those who hold on to corrupt identities will remain outside of the city until they are ready to enter. But I want to give you some hope here, okay? Yes, John says there are some outside the city. But in Revelation 21:25, he says its gates will never be shut by day, and there will be no night there. This is the greatest message that I believe John could ever end with, and it's the greatest way I could end with you this particular understanding of Revelation. There will be no closing of the gates, which tells me this. Apparently, in the new city, there will be those inside and those outside. But the best news I can tell you is those outside will always have an opportunity to come join inside. But here's the thing. No one's going to force them. No one's going to force them. So you could say it like this. John is not saying anyone who has been guilty of these failings, idolatry, imperial cult, murder. John is not saying anyone who's been guilty of these failings are prohibited from the city. He's saying that no one can bring these unjust practices into the city. You understand that? No more, John says, in this new city where there'll be practices like that. So if you're going to hold to those practices, you're going to have to stay outside the gate. But if you want to come in the gate, then here's the thing. You're going to have to lay down that stuff. There's going to need to be like a transformation. And this is why I think John ends with something so powerful. He extends an invitation. Perhaps it's an invitation to his readers. Perhaps it's an invitation for those who have gotten in bed with empire. Perhaps it's an invitation to the empire itself, an invitation to the Emperor Domitian, an invitation to those who are in the middle, centrist, who are trying to just enjoy their space of no compromise or no conviction. He's saying to everyone, all, A-L-L, the invitation is extended. The Spirit and the bride say, come, and let everyone who hears say, come, and let everyone who is thirsty come. Let anyone who wishes to take water as the gift of life come. The invitation is thrown open. What a beautiful way to end this book. You know what we've all been through the last 20 chapters. And John says, how do I want to end it? Oh, like an invitation. An invitation. So the invitation is thrown open. Are you thirsty, John says. Come. For those outside the gates in torment, fire, thirsty, come. Innate within all of us in this world, we are longing for a world where justice and righteousness prevail. We thirst for such a city. Yes, John says, come. He says to the city, come, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Yes, come. John says, for all who thirst for righteousness and justice, come on. Whoever wishes, come on. Those outside the gate, come on. MAGA, come on. Trump, come on. All of you, come on. There is space in the new city. But before you get there, you're going to need to know your homophobia is not allowed in here. Your patriarchy is not allowed in here. Your misogyny is not allowed in here. Your xenophobia is not allowed in here. And so maybe there are some, according to John, who just pause and go, I don't know that that's what I want then. And so John says they're outside the gate. But I love this. He gives us the image that even those outside the gate, at some point, their heart begins to melt. Because what John gives us is a picture of the restoration and renewal of all things. But what I love about it is it's not forced. It's just a simple, if you want to stay outside, you can stay outside. But the draw, the pull, doesn't stop for those who are outside. It continually moves in them. And it's like the invitation is extended to them, and it's there every day. It's there every day. You don't have to stay in that. Come on. There's a better way to live. Come on. You don't have to live like that. You don't have to keep repeating those patterns. Come on. There is a new Jerusalem, a new city, and we are all invited to be a part of it. The invitation is extended to you. Now, let me say something, and then we're out of here. You guys have been great. Thank you, by the way. Man, what a gift to be able to say some of the things I can say in here. We can have the conversations that we have. It's just a gift. But this week, speaking of invitations, this week I got a message from someone that said, "Oh my God, this I saw a short, like I think it was like a TikTok short. It's like a 30, 40-second clip." And the individual was like, the thing just like took off. And I'm like, what does that mean? Somewhere around 350,000 people saw about 40 seconds of a sermon I gave, which immediately when he told me that, I got real nervous because I was like, oh God, because if you cut a clip on me right now on any given moment, you might be how fast we can get this building down to 20. All right. Like, and I'm like, oh God, tell me it's not. Tell me, is it okay? Is it good? Like, what is it? He's like, oh no, it's great. I was saying something about Jesus as an American. He doesn't speak in English and whatever. And I'm like, well, if we're gonna put one out there, let's just start there, all right? And so I got a message on, I don't know, it was a Monday or Tuesday from someone I don't know. It was like a stranger, but he messaged me and he said, "Oh my God, did you see who posted your video?" And I was like, "No." And he said, "Check this out." And I went to the link, and it was a gentleman by the name of Don Lemon. Do you know who Don Lemon is? Don Lemon. I think he used to work for CNN, and maybe he still does work for CNN. They fired him, did they? Okay, well, that's a whole nother sermon. Okay, we'll go to lunch afterwards, Kevin. Okay, sorry, Don. But Don Lemon, like whatever, he pushed the little sermon out, and I just smile. I keep grinning because I'm in on the joke of all of this. Like, yeah, if people knew this little small collective, and if you knew our history of how many people been in here and left, and what a mess. I mean, it's been your leadership has been awful. Like, honestly, like I'm not a good pastor. I've never claimed to be. I speak, I do my thing. I'm not looking for a crowd, but thanks, Kevin. All right. And so I just smile because I'm like, look at this little collective, and look at these people and how they're responding to it. And I have a policy. I don't read comments or reviews or anything like that. I just don't. It's for the best, and honestly, positive or negative, because most of that's projection. You know what I mean? And so I don't want to carry everyone else's stories too. So I just don't read them. But I do have people in my life whose opinion really matters to me, and so if I say something that they need to hold me to, I know they have my best interest in mind, so they can. But there are a couple of those people that are in that circle where I have told them before, hey, I don't want to see comments, but if someone sends something that's really, really funny, can you send me that? Just because I want to laugh more. And so someone sent me one of the comments underneath Don Lemon's thing, and I want to show it to you. I want you to look at this. Okay, and I don't know if you can see this, but the first, it says, this guy at the very top, he said, quote, "He's invited to the cookout." Okay, so he's talking about me in the video, and this guy said he's invited to the cookout, which I want to pause right there and be like, that's all I've ever wanted. All I've ever wanted was being invited to the cookout. You know what I'm talking about? And then my favorite is this guy underneath with exclamation point. He says, "Faux show." All right? I just wanted you to know that on that, this is my last Sunday. You know what I mean? Like if I'm going to end people being invited to the cookout, I mean, God, when I read that one, when they sent me that one, I was like, make the week amazing. All right. I mentioned that to you because, well, everyone's invited to the cookout, right? John's like, everyone, come on in. Got the wings are smoking. Like, dude, we got craft beer, we've got wine. And for all of you who had addictions in your NAA in the new city, you don't have to worry about that anymore. How about that? Free us of that addiction. No more addictions in here. Just enjoy things for what they are. Nobody's going to be overeating in here. Just enjoy things for what they are. Come on in. Come on. You're all welcome. This is what John is saying. And then it's like he puts an emphasis at the end. And he reminds people, because as futurists read this, they believe more than 90% of God's own creation is headed for some everlasting doom outside the city. But I want you to know that sounds more like Satan wins and God loses. If your theological eschatology is that in the end, everyone but you and a handful of people just don't make it to some beautiful new city, if that's you, if you believe only you and a handful of people are going to make it, I don't know how to tell you this, but that sounds a lot like God being defeated. And I would just pose this question in closing: which is stronger and more powerful? The hardness of the human heart or God's unrelenting, infinite, expansive love? I believe God's love will eventually melt the hardest of hearts. I'm not a universalist. I think that's way too small. I'm a multiversalist. I believe God actually does win in the end. I believe love wins in the end. And I believe all nations will be restored, redeemed, and renewed. Because if one man remains outside the love of God at the end of time, it means that that one man has defeated the love of God, and I don't believe that's possible. One writer said it like this: I don't believe anyone is going to be forced to love God. In future ages, be clear, distortions will be removed, and people will realize that they only rejected false perceptions of God and not God himself. And so when John says, I am the Alpha and Omega, I believe he's saying love does not just bring the end, love is actually the end. And so I thought, how could we end this? And I had 3 endings. Now I realize we don't have time to give all 3, so I'm going to give one. And it's the most obscure one, and I don't even know how it ties in, but let's just go with a nudge. I like to quote one of the greatest rock stars of all time, Bruce Springsteen. Because if you're going to give a series of 20 teachings on the book of Revelation, I don't know of a greater prophet than Bruce to quote at the end of a series like this. Now, I bring this up before I read this quote because as the church in America keeps getting more and more in bed with the empire, they have to become chaplains of the empire. And when the church becomes chaplains of the empire, that means there are no more prophetic voices. So here's what's going to happen. Just track with me. You're already seeing it. More and more religion gets in bed with empire. The more and more you're going to see musicians, artists, and people outside the church doing the job that the church was called to do. So when I quote Bruce Springsteen, it's not a jab and a cute little nudge. It is all that. But it's also an integration of the fact that we're going to be leaning in more and more to the musicians in the years ahead for us. Because the church can't afford to speak out because its economy is hinged on the empire. But people like a Bruce Springsteen who doesn't need your money or your ticket sales and has a fire in his belly can actually speak truth to power. And so this week we'll just close with his statement, his opening tour. He said, the America I love, the America I've written about, that has been a beacon of hope and liberty for 250 years, is currently in the hands of a corrupt, incompetent, and treasonous administration. Tonight, we ask all who believe in democracy and the best of our American experience to rise with us. Raise your voices against authoritarianism and let freedom ring. He said, the America I've sung about for 50 years is real. And regardless of its many faults, it's a great country with great people. And I love this. We'll survive this moment. We'll survive this moment. Well, I have hope because I believe in the truth of what the great American writer James Baldwin said. He said, in this world, there isn't as much humanity as one would like, but there is enough. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the book of Revelation. 20 teachings in Revelation. My hope, my prayer for you is that you continue to leverage your privilege and platform, energies, and resources for the least of these, those on the edges, those on the margins. And may you and I continue at whatever the costs to keep speaking truth to the powers that be.